Welcome to the Leading with Vulnerability podcast. And today our guest is Kate Barnett, and I am your host, Yuma Barnett. And that is not a coincidence that we have the same last name. She's my wife, and I'd be remiss if during this whole journey of the last almost 20 years in the Army with her for most of it, I didn't put her on the podcast and interview her because she's got some great stories that I think will resonate with everybody. And I look forward to talking to her and sharing some of our experiences with you guys. And instead of monopolizing the time, I'll let Kate take it and introduce herself.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here and nervous. Yuma and I have been together for about 19 years now, and we're about to have our 15-year wedding anniversary. We met in Savannah. I am from Atlanta and graduated high school and went to Savannah for college, and I didn't grow up around the military. I don't think I even knew anybody in the military. I'm the oldest of three girls. I have two younger sisters, and I went to Savannah and went to Savannah College of Art and Design, and I didn't even know there was an Army base in Savannah, and met Yuma through some friends of mine my freshman year of college. Some friends of mine in the dorms, they would always go hang out and go to parties with the Army guys, and finally I was invited along with them to meet them, and Yuma was in the group. And one of my favorite stories to tell is when after dinner we went out and we were talking, and I said, well, what do you do in the Army? And he said, oh, I'm a ranger. And I said, what, like a park ranger? That's my favorite story to tell. Everybody always gets a kick out of it. But again, I just didn't grow up around the military. Navy, Army, Marines, nothing. So I have no idea when I met him what I was getting myself into. But we dated for about 4 years before we got married. And we kind of joked we were always the last ones to get married out of our group of friends, the people we knew. But in all reality, Yuma wanted to make sure that he could take care of me before he asked me to be his wife. So I get that. But here we are, 15 years later, almost 4 kids later. Yeah.
15 married years and 19 years together.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I did an extended, test drive with Kate to make sure that she was the right one for 4 years. But I think I was running close on time there, so I had to go ahead and commit to it. But you did spend, I did have my break in service, so there was that. But you were about 3 years as a military girlfriend first, which was and probably still is a little bit can be difficult and trying. What were some of the challenges in being the girlfriend of the young Ranger team leader during those deployments and all that stuff? Such
a stigma. I couldn't know any information. I couldn't know where you were going, how long you were going to be gone. No heads up about anything. It's just, I just kind of wasn't welcomed. That's the feeling I got. But I think the longer we were together and the more people saw me with you and us together, then it was acceptable that they let me know secret information.
I don't know. It's an OPSEC thing. It's a strange area to be in, but it's a unique. It was able to give you a unique perspective as we got married. And
Definitely
became part of the FRG and all that stuff later.
Well, and now that we've been married for so long, and you work with younger guys and their young wives or girlfriends, I understand. I've been in their shoes, so I know what they're thinking, and they're super shy and don't know what their husband does or boyfriend does, and they just know nothing. So I always keep that in the back of my head because of that. Yeah,
Kate's a good one because she didn't have it easy, our relationship at first. So I met you at the that night at that bar, at that establishment, where I actually proposed to her in front of it later. 4 years later, I took a knee and proposed to her in front of that bar, but it was closed at the time, but I just kind of brought it full circle to back where we were. But the first month or so, I went away on a training event and didn't see you. I had a friend of ours who was actually a groomsman in my wedding. He delivered flowers to her so I could keep her on the string while I was at the training event. And it was shortly after that I went to Ranger School, and I was gone for, the pre-Ranger and Ranger School. So, almost 90 days there. I graduated Ranger School on Friday. Kate was there to pick me up, and I deployed the next Thursday. Yeah. So we spent a lot of time apart in the beginning, which was not ideal. But she, young, good-looking college girl, she stuck with this kid from New Mexico the whole time, and I applaud her for it.
2002? 2002?
Yeah, 2002.
So there was no FaceTime. There was no Skype. Yeah. There was not even texting.
Right.
Really.
No, I didn't.
So that was different.
Yeah, so
very different.
We were together during the Iraq invasion, and you have a story about a time I sent a letter home because we weren't calling or doing anything during those initial months back in like March, April of 2003, 2003. But it's funny, just share that story.
I don't remember which deployment it was, but like I said, there was no contact at all. Very little, even snail mail, because Yuma was deployed in, such a random, barren, like middle of nowhere. He didn't have a post office and could post letters back home. So if he got a chance, he did. I have friends who would get letters and things in the mail randomly too. So it wasn't just something you get all the time. But a friend of mine called me, and her husband worked with Yuma, Scotty. And she said, "Hey, I have something for you. Let's have dinner and I'll give it to you." I was like, what? I don't understand what you have for me, but okay. So we went to dinner, and she explained the situation. A guy got hurt, and he got hurt bad enough where he had to be airlifted to Germany. And he had mere minutes. And the few guys that were around him, he said, "Hey, if you want to scribble a letter to your wife or girlfriend, give it to me and I'll see that they get it." And Yuma was one of the guys that was there and got to scribble a letter. And it was on a little tiny pocket notebook piece of paper you put in your pocket. And it just said, "Hey, I love you, miss you, I'm thinking about you, I'm okay." Yeah. And she gave it to me. And it was this little piece of paper, and that was it. And I turned it over. I read it 1,000 times. I think I held that piece of paper until you got home. But that was really cool because maybe a handful of people, 10 people, got that opportunity.
Yeah,
so
I think you said you still have it somewhere.
I do. I have it in a box.
Yeah, I've sent a few letters home on MRE boxes and stuff before we had, reliable internet and everything. That's just the best we could do. Or even the one deployment I remember to Afghanistan, when I'd call you on the phone, the satellite phone, the satellites would go around the mountains that we're in, and I would say all right, I'm going to lose you here in a minute. And I'd lose you, and then I'd call you back in 5 minutes when the satellite was back in reach of the phone. But at times, we saw the whole evolution of how communication has changed over the years to where, my last few deployments, I was texting you and FaceTiming you from my room. Yeah. So not necessarily, maybe not a good thing, because that means we had to be there for 20 years to establish that stuff. So
not something to brag about.
It was an interesting time, but it's made us stronger. It got us through it. It's the most challenging part, I think, is always just the kids, having to watch the kids go through Dad leaving again and not understanding, and Kate having to, keep things held down back here.
Yeah, that's not easy. Yeah,
and I think it brings us good to this question about vulnerability, and, that's what we're talking about here. And what's your definition of vulnerability?
For me, vulnerability is asking for help. I am not good at it. I hate doing it. To me, I feel like a failure. I feel like I can't do it all. But I think at this point, it's okay to ask for help and being vulnerable. And you can't do it all. As much as I would love to say I'm superwoman, I'm supermom, I'm not. But that's okay with me. And even more recently, you have your moments when the kids are screaming and it's dinner time and Dad's not home and hasn't been home for months, days, weeks, however long. I bottle up my emotions, and it just all comes out, and it's screaming, it's crying. It's just not pretty. And for a long time, I didn't want my kids to see me in that position. But more recently, now that Jackson's almost 13, Fallon's 9, to show them that I'm having a hard day, I miss Dad, different things that bother me and that upset me, and then we talk about it together, that has really helped a lot. And I know now that talking with them and being open with them helps them as much as it helps me.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. Because you don't want to share that because you don't want to feel like you're a burden to your kids or if they'll understand. But when you actually do it, they understand better than you could realize.
They really do.
And they're going through the same things and don't know how to express it. So by seeing mom or dad express a little bit of that, it can help them get through those hard times too. But on the kids, what's it like? How's it been like raising kids in the military environment? You know, I can't believe it. You said Jackson's almost 13. I still can't believe that it'll be 13 at the end of this month. But I mean, what has that been like for mom, being a single mom for almost 5 years of my deployed life?
It's hard. It's really hard. Again, as much as I'd like to say I'm super mom and I can do it all, I can't. And it's probably taken this long for me to figure that out. And now that we have 4 kids, it's definitely a juggling act. And, but the one thing I do want to add is I would not change a thing at all. Our kids would not be who they are if they didn't live this life. And as hard as the days are, as long as the days are, I really love to come home at the end of the day and just veg out and we watch a movie and we just have some downtime. And our kids play sports and they're pretty busy. But like tonight, it was raining and Fallon's game was canceled and we were kind of like, yes,
Yeah.
we get to veg out at home and don't have to do anything, don't have to run anywhere, go to bed late. So it is definitely a juggling act. And it kind of ebbs and flows. You're kind of in these seasons and you coming home. We're lucky enough that we've always had a good transition when you come home from a deployment. I know a lot of families aren't that lucky, but we kind of just jump back into where we were, and the kids love dad time and having dad pick him up at school if he can, and including him in like little things like that. So just little things like picking him up at school or this is pre-COVID, going to school for breakfast with the kids and just stuff like that. We definitely don't take for granted. So.
Yeah. I'd say over the years as the deployment, we probably communicate less now over the deployments, but I think our communication is probably more intentional when we do talk, because it's we can text and message a little bit easier, but when we talk on the phone, it's horrible talking to kids on the phone. Jackson's your typical boy, he doesn't have much to say. Fallon will tell you a million things,
every detail of every
day. Darby doesn't have a lot to say, and Maverick wasn't really at the age for my last few deployments where he probably even really realized it that much. But it is right. I think you're right. I wouldn't change anything about anything about it, right, other than everything I've missed, if I could be there. But it has built a level of resiliency in our kids. It's built a level of resiliency in the marriage, right? It's just as long as we communicate about it and talk about it is the key, and ask for that help when we need to, which you still struggle with. But as we're talking about the kids and asking for help, I'll bring up something that might touch on the emotional side, but it will resonate probably with military families, because a lot of times that mom will have to raise the kids far away from their mom, right? From the family. So a lot of times they can't easily pick up the phone and call and ask for help and have grandma come over and watch the kids or call for advice and all that stuff. And in your case, it's a little more unique because your mom passed away, how long ago now?
12 years ago.
12 years. Unbelievable. Just after Jackson,
Jackson wasn't 1 yet.
Almost turned 1. But I know that's been hard for you because you haven't had that easy button, that shoulder to call, and you're the oldest sister. So how do you cope with that, with your mom being gone? What is that like for you?
It's not easy. It came to kind of a shock because my mom, she got cancer. She had cancer, breast cancer. I think I was in like 6th grade. And then she got cancer again So Jackson was probably like 6 months old, and she got the diagnosis. It was lung cancer this time, a completely different type of cancer. And I think she was diagnosed in like November, and she passed away at the end of March. And it was a complete shock. It just went by super fast, and I didn't even know she was that sick. We were in Savannah at the time, and, I would talk to her. I talked to Dad. I knew she was sick, but they just didn't really tell me the whole story. And I did get to go up and visit that week before she passed away. It just so happened that Jackson and I went up there and spent some time with her, and it just was kind of her last few days, and she just passed away. So I don't think I went through a grieving process at first, because I knew how busy Yuma was, and then we had this little boy who needed all of me. And I will say it came at the right time. I got accepted to a Master's in Arts and Teaching program that summer, and I think back on it often. As hard as that was, it was a complete godsend that I stayed that busy and did my Master's in Arts and Teaching, with Jackson being one, with Yuma, with his crazy schedule and deploying. I don't think I would have made it very far. But I know now that, thanks. Thinking back on it, I kind of go through little seasons of grieving periods, like when Jackson gets older, and then we had Fallon, and I have 2 kids, and I just can't call my mom and ask for advice or help. And when Jackson was really little, she would text me every morning. She'd say, "Where's a picture of my baby? I need a picture of my baby." And would get mad at me if I didn't text her a daily picture of Jackson. So I don't have that anymore, and I can't say that it gets easier, because it doesn't, because there will always be a void, and it just plain sucks. Like, I don't know how else to describe it, and I miss that every single day. Being able to talk to my mom, or even tell her some stupid story, or I'm irritated about whatever, but in that, my younger sisters and I, we haven't really been super close, but I think in the last 10, 12 years, we have gotten really close. And my sister's Molly is 2 years younger than me, and Claire is 8 years younger than me. And they both have little kids and husbands, and they're being really great role models for their kids, and doing the best they can every day. But we have a group text, and we text all day, every day.
All day, every day.
He was like, "Here, you texting my sisters?" And that's really cool. And I know that they have noticed the closeness as well, and my dad too. And so I don't think that we can get through this without each other. So I know that is a good thing that's come out of this. So
yeah, it was tough. One of my biggest regrets is not going and seeing her right when you found out she had cancer again, because I just took it for granted. I was like, oh, she'll be fine. I deployed and came home, and Kate went up and she'd passed away, and I still carry that I didn't go see her when she was in better health, but we know she's up there watching over us.
Well, like I said, even when I talk to her, she's like, "I'm fine.
Yeah.
I'm getting better. I go for my treatments, and I come home." And
where do you get that not asking for help stuff from, right? That stubbornness. But I think it's just important to talk about that, because everybody's going through something like that, and you got to talk about it with at least a spouse, or your spouse, or your siblings, or your aunt, friend, or your uncle. But it's don't just mope and wallow in the sadness. You got to get out of it and stay busy. And
I think that goes back to me being accepted into that master's program. I would have wallowed, and it would have been awful, but I needed that busyness, and it came at the right time.
Yeah. So what advice would you give the military spouses, or any spouse out there who's got their significant others in a high pace job where their schedules are erratic? What do you do to keep your sanity?
I would say find a hobby, find a job you love, keep yourself busy. Again, it goes back to me being busy and not wallowing in my sadness or my loneliness, and find a village. I don't have a village of my mother, her advice, her friendship, her love right now. But I have my sisters, and I have some really close friends that I can count on. And even if military moves away all the time and we see people come and go all the time, I still text with people and talk to people that we haven't seen in years, and just to check in and say hi. But it's nice to know, even if we don't talk every day, we can still touch base with each other, and we have that closeness from being on the common ground of being military family, military spouse. But definitely find your village and find your people, and just create a life for yourself, so you're not waiting at home, sitting at home, watching the news, watching out the window, wondering what your spouse is doing, when is he going to be home. And you can't always have your phone on you. You can't text me, so I can't ask you how your day's going, what do you want for dinner, when are you going to be home for dinner, just silly stuff like that, not all the time. So it helps me to just have other people I can talk to and lean on if you're not that present at that time.
Yeah, I think you're right. You got to stay busy. When you've been part of the FRG for ever since I was a team leader or squad leader. Right after we got married, you became a key caller, and then FRG leader, platoon sergeant through first sergeant. The spouses or the wives that don't have a hobby and don't stay busy are the ones where they have trouble, and we see divorce and
or they pick up bad habits, staying
bad
out
habits.
late.
Yeah, it goes back to the age-old adage, but probably told by our moms: you are who you hang out with, and you got to hang out with, or surround yourself by good, positive people, and do good, positive things, and you'll get through it together. Is how you got to do it. But yeah, it's not easy, and it's not unique to the military spouse. There's truck drivers, and
even spouses that travel for work.
It's not unique, but what the solution's the same: staying busy and staying communicating and having your own life outside of it as well. Yep. So as I'm entering my military, I'm a year out now, or depending on when you're listening or watching this, I'll be closer, but May of 2022, I'll be retired from the Army. And that's a time of transition, and it's not just my transition, it's the whole family's transition. So what's your role and what's your thoughts as we move into this, new time?
To be honest, so we've talked about Yuma retiring, and it's time, and we know that it's come. But I kind of have the mentality of, that'll happen. It's not tomorrow. It's not yet. But it gets closer and closer. And Yuma's really good about keeping track of his timeline. He needs to get this done. He needs to turn this paperwork in. He needs to do this. So he always tells me, we got this going on. I have to go to this meeting or do whatever and finish this paperwork. And you just dropped your retirement packet last week. So that one thing for me was ooh, whoa, we're on the clock now. This is coming, because we've talked about it.
Right.
But now that you've actually done that physical here, this is my retirement.
Yeah.
It's hitting me. And it's been really nice this past year, maybe almost 2 years. You've been in this role where you haven't had to deploy and you haven't had these crazy training schedules. So we kind of are resetting and communicating differently and have different expectations. And I tell him all the time, I'm you're going to have to give me a minute, because I'm not used to having you around all this time. And he gets really offended if I'm Yuma can do it, because we've known each other for almost 20 years, and I've never been able to say, Yuma can do it. Yuma's got this.
Right.
He gets so mad at me. Just give me a little bit. I'm just not used to it. Yeah. So it definitely is taking some time for us to figure things out, and it's just a new life. Kind of. It is. And just, again, getting used to each other all the time.
All the time. And
all the time.
When COVID happened, I just had surgery, so I was at home. Yeah. We were quarantined at home 24/7, so it was a little bit of a sneak peek at it.
Yuma was really upset because he felt like he was worthless just sat there with the cast on and couldn't do anything.
Yeah.
But it was fine because we just hung out at home and didn't have to do anything.
Yeah,
So.
the transition piece, you just got to remember any transition that you're doing, if you're in the Army or if you're working in corporate America and you've got to move for a new job, it's not just your move, it's your whole family is transitioning, right? And that's part of the reason for this transition is that Jackson has a tough time when we move around. I mean, we've been here for 4 years almost, and he's still getting settled in and trying to find friends and all that stuff. So it's everybody's going through the transition. And
I think what's important is the communication.
Yeah.
Like, keep your family in the loop. I can't tell you, it irritates me to no end, especially younger spouses. When you meet them and you say, oh, what company is your husband in? What does your husband do? And they are like, I have no idea.
Yeah.
We live in Fort Benning, Georgia.
Yep.
That's what I know. And I'm like, oh my gosh, tell your wife what you do. What if something happens? Somebody gets hurt, maybe not the spouse, but somebody else, and they have to stay over. Like I said, they don't necessarily have their phone on them all the time, but they just need to communicate and tell them what's happening, and I won't be home. And it's just the saddest thing.
It's so easy to do. It's easy to communicate more. You just have to do it. But yeah, communication is the key to everything in life, really. As long as you communicate it, even if it's bad news, it doesn't get better with time. You got to communicate it. And if it's good news or if it's a transition or change, you just got to
I'll
talk
admit,
about it.
I am still learning how to communicate because I am not a good communicator.
Terrible, but I wasn't gonna bring that up.
Oh, thanks. I did that to myself.
Yeah. But so as we go through this transition, a question I'll ask you that I haven't asked you or preceded, seated in your mind before we did this, but where are we in 5 years?
Oh my gosh, 5 years. I think of these questions in
Jackson
terms
will be
of
18.
Yes, I think of them in terms of how old our children will be, which I hate that. And Maverick will be 7. What?
I'm glad you're thinking about how the kids will be and not how old we will be.
We don't age.
That's right.
Just the kids.
That's right.
I don't know. So I went back and got my master's in arts and teaching, and I'm a certified art teacher in the state of Georgia. So recently I started to substitute teach to kind of get my foot in the door to find a job. So hopefully by that time I will have my own classroom.
Right.
Fingers crossed.
If you're hiring an art teacher out there, please.
Preferably around this area.
Preferably, yeah. Not in Atlanta or Mississippi.
No.
But if it is there, well, you can commute.
I know. I can commute. So yeah, I would hope that I would have a job by then, and you will be the podcaster du jour.
Yeah. Okay. I like your 5-year view of us.
Yeah.
So so in all this, if you could go back and talk to your 20-year-old self when you were dating, specialist Barnett, what would you...
Before I took the leap and married into the military.
What advice would you give Kate?
Oh gosh. I think the biggest thing would be to just take each day one at a time, and maybe we don't communicate the best, but you have a husband who wants to come home at the end of the day and wants to be around his children and his wife and enjoy their time, and I need to focus on that and enjoy that time with you. Yeah, I think that's it. And I've been pretty good about my expectations of you coming home and when you'll be home or not be home. But I think that I myself need to take a step back and remember those things. So.
Yeah, so with that, I guess we'll wrap it up here. But I'll say I love you.
Thanks.
I'm looking forward to the next few years with you, next 5 at least, because they sound like they're going to be pretty good if we get it done your way. But appreciate you coming on here, exposing yourself a little bit, talking about your mom, which I know you don't like to do.
My vulnerability.
But it's important. And for everybody out there watching, please like, share, and subscribe, and give us your feedback. Much appreciated. And we'll talk to you again soon.